Then suddenly out of the blue, he messages me and says, oh, hey, I've nearly finished with the manuscript. Question 1, are you still available to proofread it and edit it? Question 2, I'm launching a podcast. I would really love to be able to use Chupacabra's music as like incidental music. Plus, as you probably listen to, there's some like little snippets of Slayer songs here and there, like essentially just with Slayer covers, use some snippets from Chupacabra songs. Once I'd kind of picked myself up off the floor, I was like, yeah, yes, and yes.
Ghost Cult Magazine welcomes in Nige and Heather from Chupacabra from the UK. How are you doing tonight?
Hey man, thanks for having us. We're good.
It's a work in progress. I'm great. And, life is what it is. Fitting in an interview in the workday. But I appreciate you making time in your evenings for us. You guys have a brand new EP coming out soon, Fortified With Ashes. I am so pumped. We've been trading blows on the internet, and I really appreciate the support of the band. And we're super stoked to support such a killer bunch of new music. And this is kind of a new-ish project for you, but you guys are not new to the scene in the metal scene in the UK and Bristol. So as I like to do sometimes with these, let's have a little origin story, a potpourri, and tell us about how you guys formed.
Do you want to go to start, Nige?
Yeah, sure. So basically, so Heather and I we were in like a Sabbathy kind of doom metal band probably started about 6 or 7 years ago, I guess. And yeah, it was very different, very different style of music. I was playing guitar in that band, Heather was playing bass. That band kind of imploded for various reasons, which are too sordid to go into. And everyone kind of went their separate ways. And then COVID got in the way as well. But then, I'd been writing the some songs which we can talk about in a little bit, but I realized that I was going to need somebody to do vocals, and Heather had done backing vocals and had done some singing for the previous bands that we'd done, and I was like, I wonder if Heather would be interested. So I got Heather involved, and she just completely smashed it. That was so short history. We were in bands before COVID, playing live, writing stuff. That broke up, and then this happened sort of during COVID and since. So so
Nige went to ground during COVID. I didn't see it like that after the band disbanded. Didn't see him for like about a year. Didn't hear from him. He just kind of disappeared off the face of the planet. And he popped up about a year later out of nowhere. I was like, oh, I've got written this album, and he just sent it over to me. He was like, would you you're interested in doing some vocals on this? I was like, holy shit, that is amazing. Like that's what you've been doing all this time. I was like, brilliant. I'd love to give it a go, but I'd never done. I've never fronted a band before at that point. So it was kind of a new thing for me. I had no idea what was going to come out. It was amazing and nice to give it to me to try. I was like, no idea how this is going to sound, man. But like, yeah, it's awesome. And that's how it happened. That was like 2 years ago.
It was probably, when was that? Like we recorded it in early 2021 or mid 2021. So like sort of, almost 2 years ago now. But then for Veo, I think for both of us separately, life kind of got in the way, and we both went through a lot of shit, which again is probably too sort of deep and meaningful to go into. But so we kind of shelved everything. But then partly because of the link up with DX Ferris, which we can talk about, but also just gradually kind of came around to thinking, well, hey, look, we've done these recordings. We may as well get them out there and give them a bit of a push and see what happens, So
right on.
You seem to like it.
Yeah, so. Absolutely. You did smash it, Heather, and actually helped me with my segue, because if you had not said, oh, I've been fronting bands for years, I would not have known, because you sound very natural. Phenomenal job on the vocals, super heavy and gnarly, all the things I like. And
amazing.
Personally, my personal taste, which is totally not important to the great scheme of the world, but just for this purpose of this interview. And I think we had covered some of your other bands actually, because we have a very big foothold in the UK. We were originally a European zine, a digital web zine and a zine in Europe to start with, and I took it over in the short history. Sure. The early days. We're going on year 11, so we've done a lot of local coverage, London area metal bands, all the little fests, all the big fests. So chances are, I feel like you're familiar to me in any way your other bands when I was reading the bio. And shout out to Clawhammer PR. But I think we would have got on.
They're amazing.
Yeah, you would have got on our radar anyway, I think, because what happens is when you've covered a lot of bands and followed a lot of band camps and followed a lot of Facebook pages, even in this kind of dead age of social media, you just get reminded of things. You get shown things, you get seen, things get presented. So I think we would have sooner or later picked up on you. But then on top of this killer EP that's coming is this collaboration, as you mentioned, with DX Ferris. For those that don't know, I should have had my book handy. I literally just got the new updated version. It's in the other room. Not going to stop to go get it. But DX Ferris is the author of many books. He just started a Slayer podcast. He wrote the definitive Slayer book, basically, before they ever put out anything about themselves. He was documenting arguably the most important metal band ever, beside Black Sabbath and Metallica. Well, you could pick any of those three, throw a blanket over them, punch one with a hammer and take out two. It's okay. And I feel like, hasn't the world gone to shit since Slayer retired at the end of 2019? It's just me personally, worse and worse and worse. But I think DX, he also has a book on Goodfellas, the movie, which I love. Everybody loves Scorsese's violent mob movies. So he's amazing. And he started this Slayer podcast. So you guys have kind of soundtracked his podcast and his book, which is crazy. Yeah. So let's hear about how did that come about?
Well, it was completely weird, So I guess I'd been, the only social media that I do is Twitter. Now I do a bit of Instagram and stuff just because of the band, but I'd been on Twitter for a few years. And me and Ferris had been, I guess, Twitter friends, but I didn't know him at all. But at some point, so in my day job, I'm like an editor and a writer and that kind of thing. Not in the music world at all, in like business world, but that's kind of my thing, is like writing and editing and so on. And so I can't remember, honestly to this day, I can't remember how it happened, but it was about 6 or 8 months ago or so. I got talking to Ferris and he mentioned that he was doing a new edition of this book. And I was like, oh, and I'm not really a particularly pushy person, but I replied to him and I said, hey, if you need somebody to edit it or like proofread it or whatever, then that's my day job. So if you want someone who knows how to edit and proofread, but also knows the subject matter, because obviously I'm a big Slayer fan, then let me know. And he came back and I said, look, I don't want to be paid. It's just like, I know that this is I'm happy to help out, right? So he was like, oh man, that's so cool, blah, blah, blah. And then we sort of got talking a bit more. And this kind of coincided with me starting to think, or me and Heather starting to think, hey, maybe we should get this out there. Maybe we should get this EP out there. Let's see what people think. And so I sent it to a few kind of close contacts on Twitter, like on metal Twitter. I sent it to James McBain, who's the guy from Hellripper, who again I'm not friends with, but I kind of got to know him a bit on Twitter, and because he was obviously like one guy doing everything, there was some parallels to what we were doing. So I sent it to him, sent it to a couple of podcasts, and I sent it to Ferris, and I was like, hey, look, you seem to be a guy that isn't gonna, you'll give me an honest opinion. If I send you this stuff, can you tell me what you think, honestly? Because it hasn't been released. I'm not sure about whether it's going to be good enough, because I have this self-doubt all the time. Anyway, so he came back and he was just like, holy fuck, this is amazing. And he said, this is actually the thing, this is what he told me was actually what kind of persuaded me that it was worth releasing. Because he said, is this going to be the next Rain in Blood? No, it's not. But is it absolutely good enough to be out there? Absolutely it is. So that was pretty cool. And then the feedback from other people was great as well. So that was that. And then I didn't hear anything. And I was like, hey man, that's really cool. Didn't hear anything else about the book side of things. So I just left it because I thought, well, maybe he's decided not to do it or whatever. Then suddenly out of the blue, he messages me and says, oh, hey, I've nearly finished with the manuscript. Question 1, are you still available to proofread it and edit it? If you are, I'd really appreciate it. Question 2, I'm launching a podcast. I would really love to be able to use Chupacabra's music as like incidental music. Plus, as you probably listen to, there's some like little snippets of Slayer songs here and there as well. And he said, so the music would be like a mixture of, can you record some Slayer, like essentially just with Slayer covers, use some snippets from Chupacabra songs. And I was like, once I'd kind of picked myself up off the floor, I was like, yeah, yes, and yes. So that was it. And so so after that, and since then, we message every few days and we just talk shit about stuff, and he's become, we've never met, but next time I come over to the US, I mean, he's the first person I'm heading to Ohio. I think he lives somewhere in Ohio, and I'm buying him the biggest beer I've ever available.
Me too. I'm sending him over there to buy him a beer from me.
Yeah, because he's just, because first of all, it was really not thanks to him, but it was because of his feedback that was a big reason why we decided to release this in the first place. And then also because it's got this connection with his book and with him, I think that's got the EP more traction than maybe it would have done if we hadn't had that link up. It's just given a little extra sort of book, I suppose. So yeah, it's been brilliant. But completely random,
Fair enough. And thanks for unpacking all that. And also everybody has that imposter syndrome thing, by the way. So don't feel bad. We're all little anxiety cucumbers. Like we don't know what to do.
Right.
And yeah, he's amazing. And yeah, let's all buy him. Let's all chip in for a Ko-fi or a PayPal or something, a Venmo, and get him a boot of beer, because that guy has done a lot for music. And I still think, even if that hadn't happened for you, this music is very strong. And you know, there's a lot of thrash bands out there, right? The genre is packed with bands, legend status bands. We were just talking about offline about Overkill and Forbidden. The UK has tons of killer bands in the genre. Some leading lights. Evil has a new record coming out. It's just out, so super stoked for that. And Gamma Bomb put out an incredible album last year, and many more. So how did you, coming from, you know, some veteran bands, did you just set out and write some riffs? Did you think, oh boy, I've got to like compete on a level, step my game up, do something I've never done before? Or do you just kind of let it go naturally when you write?
Yeah, well, so it's interesting because the reason I've been in you know, tons of bands over the years, but I've never been in a thrash band, even though thrash is what I was a teenager in the 80s, right? So I grew up at just when all those bands were peaking, you know, and I've loved thrash ever since, but I've never kind of really sat down and written a thrash album. I've written a few riffs here and there, but it's never developed into anything. And I think it's really weird that, you know, what Ferris said, is this going to be hailed as the next Raid in Blood? No, I think that was almost maybe what was stopping me, right? Because it was like, well, if I can't write something as good as Angel of Death, or I can't write something as good as Blackened or as good as Holy Wars, what's the point? Whereas that's a really fucking stupid way of thinking, right? So I think when it got to COVID, nobody was doing anything, you know, nobody was playing in bands, nobody was doing anything. And I was just like, you know what? And I had a lot of stuff going on in my life, and I wasn't in a particularly good place, frankly. So I probably had a lot of frustration and anger and self-hatred inside me and stuff. And I just thought, it was almost like for something to do, right? I want to keep being creative. And I'm like, I feel like now is the time I'm going to write a thrash album. And so I just sat down and I thought, well, the first couple of things, I tried to challenge myself to write a song every couple of weeks. And I think in the end, I wrote one a week. No vocals, all the lyrics and all the vocals, everything. That was entirely Heather, by the way. So I don't want to claim any credit for that. That was all her. But I'm just talking about riffs. I think the first couple of things that I wrote were okay. And I was like, oh, this is all right. But then the third song that I wrote is what became Burn the Clouds, which was the first single. And I think when I wrote that was a bit of a turning point, because I was like, oh shit, I'm actually quite proud of this, you know. And I left it for a few days, came back to it and thinking, I wonder what this is going to sound like after a few days. And I was like, oh, okay, this still sounds really kind of exciting. And that was kind of that was the moment where I got a bit more serious about it. Yeah. And then carried on writing the rest of it, you know. So it was just really it was just keeping creative in a challenging time for me and for the world, you know.
Right on. I have some questions for you, Heather, but just one last thing for you on the music, Nige. I take it you're a multi-instrumentalist, but when you go to write, do you start with guitar? I know you did everything but the leads and the vocal here.
Yeah, usually guitar first. I think there was one of the songs which we haven't released yet, but it may be coming up on EP number 2, which we can talk about in a minute. I think that one started on bass. I just had a bass. I just happened to pick the bass up and I just started playing. And I was like, oh shit, that sounds cool. So yeah, but often it'll just be me sitting down and I'll stick on a drum loop of something just to give me some kind of idea of, okay, well, you know, I just put something else on at random and then see what comes up. And sometimes nothing will, but sometimes, you know, it just something appears and you're just like, oh, okay, this is cool. And then you just develop it from there. So, but most of it's written on guitar, and it's, you know, like thrash is riff-based music, right? So, and riffs come from guitars.
That's true. I mean, there are some drummers out there who can make some drum riffs, and the drums are particularly banging on here also. So nice job there. I don't know if
bass leads stuff like, you know, like Peace Sells, right? There's a classic bass led, but
indeed, I actually just interviewed David Ellefson about that, because MTV killed off MTV News, and so that MTV News theme song was the Peace Sells intro. And so I got to talk to him about that, and he's like, I'm so grateful. So it was amazing. Like it just happened, the timing. I had a different question for him. Like I had a final question for him, talking about his new thrash and death metal band, Dieth. And then I was like, oh, you know, MTV News just shut down. Let's talk about this bass. It's you and Gar. You know, it's like, it was a nice memory for him. I don't think he was thinking too deeply about it, but it was neat. So Heather, for you, obviously this was, you know, like you said, you had never fronted a band before, but like this is a fully formed performance and lyrics. So I feel like you worked really hard on this. Can you talk a little bit about your process, either in the writing and also going into the studio for the first time as a lead?
Yeah. It was I was also in a really, really bad place. So this was more about my cathartic venting of my shit. Than actually about creating music. I think for both of us, it had that element of, and it was just, there was no big studio, there was no big band. It was me and Nige together at Nige's house in his home studio, so it's very sort of comfortable. And I was just, I'd come up with a notepad with like scribbles all over it where I'd had some ideas. And I've been listening to the tracks over and over and over again and kind of just coming up with patterns and sounds. And I would just sort of riff that out. And then words would kind of crystallize in what I'm doing. And then I would kind of be just sort of expressing just raw emotions, really, and then it would kind of crystallize into something. I didn't set out to write a song about this or that. It just kind of came out on the day, and then I would kind of come away again and refine the words a little bit more to bring it, to make a bit more sense. And that's how they came out. Part analogy of my raw emotions and part directly about my experience. But yeah, there was no, I want to sound like this, I want to create this, it was just, I've got all this shit. It's just coming out. There was no stopping it. So yeah, I think a few people have said, it sounds really raw and emotional, and yeah, it was a really raw, really emotional time. And yeah, it was necessary for me. I needed that right then.
I hear you.
Thank
you for sharing.
No worries. So
we've all been going through it for the 3 years.
Sure, yeah,
I
know,
Set
right?
it all on fire and start over. It's terrible.
I know, right? Burn the clowns.
Yes. So many meanings with that clowns. It could be so many people and so many things. And it could just be clowns. I don't like scary clowns unnerve me. So that could be it's not quite a phobia, but it definitely disturbs. I couldn't finish that one season of American Horror Story because of the creepy clown was upsetting me.
But then friendly clowns could be even scarier because you never really know what's behind the friendly.
Oh God, clowns are awful. I hate clowns.
My partner here at Ghost Cult worked at the circus, and I had nothing but good experiences in person with clowns. So I think it's just the clowns of my dream, it, and Pennywise, and the clowns of my nightmares is the problem here. And but for Heather, just in addition to you just kind of getting this all off your chest and off your sleeve, who were some of your vocal inspirations, even if they don't translate to what we're hearing? Do you have any metal vocalists you particularly favor?
Angela Gosso, amazing. Absolutely, she's my hero. She's absolutely amazing. OTEP, I love OTEP. And male ones. Randy Blythe I love his diction and his pronunciation. I've been trying to work on my voice because there's no point in writing good lyrics and expressing yourself if no one can hear it, right? And then a lot of metal, you can't quite make it out. So he's great for that. Yeah, Angela Gosso, I love her. And Alyssa as well, but not so much. Angela's my hero.
Oh, Angela's wonderful. I was fortunate enough to see the band a bunch with her. I love OTEP. I actually saw the first date of OTEP's recent tour, her comeback tour.
Women's a Fire tour.
Yeah, and she just put out a cover of Billie Eilish song, which is insane.
That's
I didn't know I needed a brutal Billie Eilish cover, but I did. In this year, and I'm really looking forward to. She has a new record that I believe is coming out either later this year or first thing next year. I think it's late 23. So I'm like, oh, please, I need this. And Randy, ridiculous. He's so great.
He's so good. It's just next level,
right? Oh, ridiculous. So let's do a little track by track. We've only got 3 songs, but let's take a quick look at this EP. And if I open up the right window with the songs, that would be useful. Everything is terrible today. I don't know why. I got it right here. Here's the thing. Before we get into the track by track, I'm gonna upend my own email. Chupacabra, right? It comes from Latino Latinx lore, the goat sucker. It's a mystical monster being. There's an amazing episode of X-Files for you X-Files nerds out there like me that had the Chupacabra brothers. But how do we land on this name? This is such a sick name.
Well, so that's exactly it, right? So I was not a massive X-Files nerd back in the day, right? I wasn't. But when it was on, I used to catch episodes here and there. And when it was on, I used to watch it and go, yeah, that's cool. And one episode that I saw, and bearing in mind this would have been, when was that? Late 90s? Mid 90s? I can't remember when it was on now, but it was a long time ago. And there was one episode that I remember, which was this, it was I don't know if it was Mexican or South American, but this mythical, the episode you were talking about, right? The episode, I think it was in season 4 or something, and it was about the Chupacabra. And I remember thinking that would make a fucking cool name for a metal band one day. And I think we nearly called the previous band that, but I think maybe I was outvoted and I wasn't really strong enough to be like, no, fuck you, I'm going to call it Chupacabra. But so this time, I think we were thinking about names, and it was you that said, why don't you just call it Chupacabra? That's like the name you wanted to call it anyway. And I was like, oh yeah, okay. So that, yeah, it does come from the X-Files, from me watching a random episode of X-Files 25 years ago.
Amazing. Yeah. Technically, the mythology lives in all Latin culture, as far as I know. Central America, South America, Mexico, Puerto Rico. They all have some version of it. And that actor, one of the actors of the two brothers who are, afflicted in the episode, one of them went on to be in Training Day and Breaking Bad as pretty prominent bad guys. A little bit of history, TV acting history there for you. But anywho, great name. I don't know why anyone didn't think of it sooner. Amazing. Let's talk about the tracks. I'll shout out the track names and you guys can riff on whatever you feel like sharing. I never expect anybody to share everything, but whatever you like to share about them. Obviously, the EP kicks off with, again, the aforementioned.
Sure, yeah. So this ended up being about my so the main line in it is fuck the patriarchy, right? So it's clearly got a feminist agenda behind it. Most of my stuff does have a feminist agenda. That's not to say it's anti-men. It's the system that I have got a massive problem, and I think it's in a lot of ways just as bad for men, if not worse for men. The patriarchy, it's all just fucked, particularly in politics. And I've got a real bugbear about the imbalance of the nature of the sexes within politics and the effects that that has. There's a lot of power hungry, sort of like emotionless, like power freaks making really fucking shit decisions. Not to get into a political agenda, but yeah, it's so that song is just my angst and release of just the whole thing is like, look, it is just fucked. Like these people, they are clowns. Politicians are clowns. They're idiots. Like let's just let them burn the whole shit system down themselves, because that's what they're doing. Pull up a chair, roll one, and let's watch it burn. That's where that song ended up. And I'm really looking forward to playing that song live and getting to scream "fuck the patriarchy" at a crowd. I really am. That's going to be my highlight of the set when we do play live, Nige, which we will.
We will. Yeah, I think everyone will be terrified. But
And rightfully so, as another round, bearded, bald, white guy with no power. It's like there's a weird thing going on in the world where like we've needed like this advanced next wave feminism for such a long time that there's a weird social media clapback against any feminism, but that's a lack of understanding about like the history of humankind, with like a foot on the throat of every woman and blaming women for everything. And but body autonomy here in the States just got literally eroded before our very eyes, and it's all it's all our fault. So if we can help in any way, please keep shouting it. And
let's not forget the trouble men have with it, right? Yes, it's oppressive to women, it's also oppressive to men.
Yeah,
you've got, I mean, I don't want to get dark on you, but like male suicide is the biggest killer. And why is that? Patriarchy. That's because you've got a whole load of men that have been told to suppress their emotions. Boys don't cry, all of this bullshit. That's fucked up, man. And there's a lot of guys I think don't equate the two things. That's the patriarchy fucking that up, isn't it? So it's all of us in this boat. It's affecting us in different ways. Obviously, it's sort of the more kind of literal ways for women. We're oppressed in kind of the obvious ways, and men are oppressed in the really damaging emotional ways. Like it's just a shit system, isn't it?
It truly
does nobody any good apart from the people in power.
It truly is. I also want to say, for such a heavy song, Nige, it's a hook. It's catchy, right? It's got a great hook as a thrash song, which you can't say about a lot of thrash songs. There are some bands, we were talking about Overkill, that'll just suck you in with a great refrain. But like it's heavy, but it's also like, I love that it's hooky too.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think that the way that I approach, what I realized is the way that I approach structuring songs is almost not what you would expect from a thrash song necessarily, because I do think of it in terms of, here's a verse, chorus, catchy chorus, changes in tempo, what's going to feel sort of uplifting, like, so the chorus of Burn the Clowns, for example, does go into this kind of halftime type thing, and it's a bit more, I wouldn't say necessarily sing along, but it's close. It's a sing along as we're ever going to get, right? So, and I just think that I think that those dynamics and movements of like really fast bits, which I think, really fast bits are essential to thrash as far as I'm concerned, right? The really fast bits become even stronger when you mix it up with changes in tempos and slow bits and quieter bits and slightly more melodic bits. There's harmony guitars playing in the background of Burn the Clowns and in the other songs we've done as well. I just think it's important to kind of to mix it up rather than just being 1,000 miles an hour all the time.
Agreed. Thanks for that.
Yeah.
I want to move along to the track we got to premiere, which I'm again super thankful and pleased to team up.
Yeah, back to you.
No, well, just it's like Voltron, and I'll form the head. The second track is FTTD.
This one is a very personal track, and it's all my angst coming out. I'd just been through a very, very hideous, traumatic breakup from a relationship that I realized that was hideously traumatic and abusive, and that was my venting. That was my song where all of that pain and all of that angst. The lyrics are very obvious. It's very, very blatant and very attacking and angry, because that was that raw emotion that I was feeling very strongly at the time from feeling completely stitched up. Yeah, that is. It's pretty straight down the line, that one. There's not much to say about it, really. It's a breakup song.
Yeah, and I think we talked about how open Heather wanted to be on lyrics and stuff, because obviously that's a really, I guess Burn the Clowns is a bit more of a sort of a general view of society or of the world, whereas FTTD, Final Time to Die, is very personal, and I wanted to we made sure that Heather doing that, and I think it's really brave actually to be.
Thank you.
Well, I think it's really brave of Heather to actually kind of A, sing it, and B, want to talk about it.
Yeah, it put me up against my authenticity when I was asked to do a little bit of blurb on it, and I had this little debate with myself, and we talked, didn't we? I remember you were really supportive and saying you don't have to talk about this one because it's extremely personal. But actually, authenticity to me is really, really important in music, and I was like, what am I going to do? Am I going to write? Am I going to be that raw and that real in writing the song, and then just waffle about it when I'm asked what it actually means? No, I can't do that. It's there, isn't it? That was, admittedly, it was just me in Nigel's house venting my pain and my shit into this song. It wasn't really ever, I didn't think anyone would ever ask. We weren't sure anyone was ever going to listen to it, let alone ask what it was about. So there was no kind of thinking ahead. But I found myself in this position of going, okay, now it's out there and people are digging it and people want to know about, and obviously I'm not the only person. I'm gonna share. I'm gonna be authentic. My story, it's my truth. What happened to me. So there it is. It's out there.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for sharing.
And I think, from a well, no, not necessarily from a musical point of view, but I think one of the reasons why I really like what we're doing is that it's got one foot very heavily in old school thrash, right? Obviously the musical stuff. But I think that the thing that I really love about it is that Heather's approach to vocals and to lyrics takes it out of being purely a retro old school thrash thing and into something that sounds a lot more modern. And I think it's that kind of combination that I think really works actually, and it's quite hard for me to say that because as I've alluded to before, I think everything I've done is shit, right? So I think this actually,
both got imposter syndrome. Yeah.
You know what I mean? I just think it's like it's quite refreshing to hear something that's at the same time knowingly old school, but also not just these guys want to be. I think we sing about, or Heather sings about completely different things to those, a lot of those retro type bands, and there's nothing wrong with that, singing about Satan and killing people and stuff. I think there was a quote that Gary Holt said about their 90s period, which is like, I wish we'd never bothered trying to kind of do anything different. I wish we just carried on writing songs, which is like, they're brilliant at that, and I never want them to change, and Slayer singing about all the stuff they sang. It's all completely valid, but I'm quite proud of the fact that we sing about something.
I can't really do anything else. I've got to, what comes out is what's in there. I couldn't have that amount of emotion to put into a song about something that doesn't connect to me. So there's no choice really. When I get in front of a microphone, you're going to get what's in there.
I think it sounds real as well. I think if something is authentic, if somebody listening to it can feel that it's authentic, that immediately makes it better, I think.
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of pain in that song, and a lot of pain.
There's already plenty of songs about moshing and serial killers. We're good. That quota's filled. And Nige, I'm sending you a mental hug. I'm with you. I'm with you right there. Believe me. The final track on this EP is the title track, "Fortified with Ashes."
Yeah, so this one came out. It connects with it's a little bit of a process. So FTTD was my initial kind of rage and pain and hurt of discovering all this trauma and discovering that I was actually in this situation that was really abusive that I didn't realize, and that was a cathartic release of that into that song. Fortified with Ashes was a little bit further down my process of kind of rebuilding myself yet again from this process of being burned to the ground. And in crystallizing the lyrics when it was all coming out, it somehow came out as kind of an analogy to witches being burnt at the stake, and it became a little bit about the Spanish Inquisition and feminism again, because obviously that's the epitome of misogyny, isn't it? Burning us at the stake. So the beginning of the song talks about religion and burning and sort of rising up, and the theme throughout the song when I was putting the words together was of a witch that had repeatedly kept coming back and kept being burnt at the stake and burnt in the stake, and each time being more with her own ashes, that she'd been burnt to the ground. So each time you come back stronger, and you build yourself out, and each time she comes back she's got more rage and more retribution and more karma, and by the end of the song it kind of reveals that that's what it's about. But it's just my analogy of like the same in the relationship that was a long time burnt and rebuilt and being burnt back down again, and then eventually after the final death of FTTD, that's what that analogy is, the final death of it, that the person with 9 lives who got away with it so many times finally dies, that the girl is rebuilt. Yeah, so that is a little bit of a story in there, in analogies.
You unwittingly release a concept EP, which I didn't realize. Maybe you did. I didn't even know. That's brilliant. We're a prompt
music teach you sometimes, right? The music.
There's this 9 Lives theme. Sorry, yeah, there's this 9 Lives theme that runs through it with the person FTD is about, but believing they've got 9 lives and the final life being taken in the final end of it, or the line being drawn. And then in Fortified with Ashes, it's about the witch that's had 16 lives, being burnt 9 times at the stake, and then comes back finally after the 9th life and takes everyone out.
So in the end, it is about killing people, it's done in a poetic way, you know.
Sorry?
So it is still about killing people. It's just in a very poetic and
exactly. It is actually, yeah.
So we still have that foot in the old schools. We're still killing people.
and there it is, satisfying all the things. So this EP releases August 4th, and you already mentioned shows and another EP already in the works. So let's hear a little, whatever you feel like revealing. If you've got a show, we'll link it in the description. Booked, if you've got something booked. If not, we'll wait for it till you do.
Sure.
So live stuff, you know, I'd kind of decided that I couldn't be. I've done so many live things over the years and played to 2 people on a rainy Wednesday, you know, somewhere, and I just thought I can't be bothered doing that anymore. But that was before we released this, and before people got really interested in it, and the numbers of people that have said you've got to play this live, so I've moved from a position of I'm not going to play live to a position of maybe this will be quite fun, but there's nothing. There's nothing sort of underway. There's nothing booked at the moment in terms of what's coming next. So as Heather mentioned, when I wrote the songs, I actually wrote a whole album. So I wrote 10 songs. A couple of those, with the benefit of hindsight, are probably not really up to scratch. So that's like, we've got basically 8 songs that the music's all written. Since then, obviously, I've written, actually the past couple of weeks, I wrote a couple of, or 2 or 3 new ones, which I think sound pretty cool. So, but anyway, the next step is Heather's currently working on the next batch of songs, whether that's 3 or 4 or 5, however many it ends up being. And we're aiming to get that released before Christmas, just to kind of keep it's kind of weird, because I think that the way that the whole industry seems to work these days is less about, unless you're an established band, it's less about albums every 2 or 3 years and more about, you know, keeping a momentum going and having, okay, so we want to get these 3 songs out now, another 3 songs out before, or 4 songs or whatever before Christmas, maybe some more first half of next year, you know, just to kind of keep things rolling and building, hopefully. But yeah, the next step is that we're currently in writing mode, or I've done my writing. Heather is now in writing mode, and then in the next, couple of months, we'll get everything recorded and then sent off to the guy that produced Fortified with Ashes is an awesome producer called Winter Pryor, who works down in Brighton, which is on the south coast of the UK. He's kind of directly down from London, and he did a really fantastic job. And so we've been in touch with him, and he's up for doing it again. So he'll be doing the next EP as well. yeah, so that's it. So aiming to get that out before Christmas.
Amazing. I'm not a big, I don't want to get too woo-woo on you, but I'm gonna throw this out into the universe. Two other bands that I interviewed recently from the UK, and like let's just a fist for how many great UK metal bands across all stripes are happening right now. It's an incredible boon of bands. But two bands I interviewed recently, All Father, which is live on YouTube on the channel and on our website, and Earn, which hasn't come out yet, but their album is yet to come. And just two brilliant bands. And I would love to see you guys open for those two bands.
Oh, amazing.
I think it would be a really great pairing, slightly each different, but all heavy and exciting, in my personal opinion. So I'm going to throw it out there. I'm sure I have no pull. And
I think both of those bands. I mean, I think the new Earn album is just, from what I've heard so far, is just absolutely amazing. And I got to know those guys a little bit over the past couple of years. The drummer particularly, but then the drummer, then he left, and so he's been replaced, which is a bit annoying. But I got to hang out with them quite a bit at a couple of festivals last year, and I saw them supporting Gatecreeper at a really small venue in the UK, and it was just absolutely rammed. But they completely smashed it, man. They were. It's like I saw them 3 or 4 times over the past 18 months, and every time they just got better. They just upped their game, and it's just like. And then now they work. You know, they did this new album with Gojira, which is like, I mean, and they opened for Gojira in places in Europe, didn't they? Which is just like, what an amazing thing to happen for them, you know. But you're right, you know, the UK scene is brilliant. You know, there's Pest Control, who are like a sort of thrash hardcore band. If you don't know them, you would love them if you're a thrash guy. Female vocalist again. I think Heather is better, but she's still. I think Heather's the best female metal vocalist out there. So, you know, but you know,
and she turns 10 shades of red.
Yes.
But you know, Hell Ripper obviously is somewhat of, not necessarily a musical influence, but although, you know, in the ballpark, I guess, but certainly in terms of how he has built his career, essentially. You know, I know he's a lot younger than we are, right? But he started Hell Ripper when he was in his university dorm room, right? Which I didn't realize. And it was, he's built everything himself. He didn't play live for a few years, I don't think. He just wrote stuff, recorded stuff, released it, built a following on social media. And I just think he's just like for me, he's a real inspiration, you know. And I've told him that. And I don't know if you've ever spoken to him, but he's like very quiet and very sort of shy and self-effacing, you know. He's completely, if you think about what Hell Ripper sounds like, he is the complete opposite of that. He's like really nice, really mellow, really shy. He's you know, I just think he's done an amazing thing with that music and with what he's done, you know. And his live shows now are just absolutely brilliant. And I don't think he's been over to the US, but if he's ever playing anywhere near you, stop whatever you're doing and go and see them, because they're absolutely amazing. He's got a killer
100%.
band.
Yeah, I've never chatted, but we reviewed the EP and the new album, and I believe they're headlining a pretty important festival in Scotland now, Hordex. He's now the headliner. So, you know, just up and up and up. So yeah, the whole scene is just rising, and you guys are part of that. So welcome, and welcome edition, and thanks for chopping it up with me today. This has been a gas, and I really appreciate you both. And yeah, all the best success, and we'll keep following you, and we'll keep, you know, it's the only thing keeping Twitter interesting to me is metal Twitter. So, you know, so I have my days when they come for us, when they don't like some of the things we say and do, but you know, whatever, you can't please everybody.
No, that's brilliant. Thank you so much for having us. It's been really fun.
Thank you. Really appreciate it, man. And thanks for your support.